I am getting frustrated with because I feel like you're not getting the best version of me, which you may have never had. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to share this PowerPoint, and since I'm sharing it from the screen, it should show up and be recording since I didn't switch from a computer screen to PowerPoint. We're talking about body tissues. We specifically started talking about epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is for protection, but not just protection. It has multiple functions: protection, absorption, filtration, and secretion. Wink might be your attendance question for September 2nd. Wink. The epithelial tissue is found in your body coverings and linings and glandular tissue. We have endocrine and exocrine tissue in our bodies that is constantly producing hormones. I know I've said that before. You've heard it. We looked at the junctions between cells and epithelial tissue, and I was afraid I really might have confused some of y'all with that because I was trying to remember myself as I was saying it to you. But there are 3 different types of junctions. You have tight junctions, which if I take my hands and squish them together as much as I can, there is no room between the tissues in my hand, well, except to get fluid in there or for anything to leak through. That is a tight junction. Then you have desmosomes, which are protein spikes that go into each cell and hold it in place. Tight junctions are so cells don't leak. Desmosomes are so cells aren't torn apart because these anchor them together. And the third type is gap junctions, which are holes in the cells that allow chemicals to flow from one cell to another through the cytoplasm. And those are all very important. You do want to know the junctions. We talked about the basic structure of every epithelial cell. There's going to have a couple of basic things. They have an apical or free surface that is exposed into the body because it filters and absorbs and it secretes, so it needs to be exposed so it can do those things. And then it has a basilar surface that is connected. And we saw that it was connected to basal lamina on the epithelial side, and then reticular lamina on the connective tissue side. And then directly below that reticular lamina is collagen. Now, collagen is very loosely based. And so collagen doesn't allow, sorry, I got distracted by something happening on my screen. Collagen is very loose and not packed tight, and so collagen has nerve endings, and collagen has blood vessels in it. Epithelial tissue does not have blood vessels. It is avascular, which it says right here. And so it gets all of its nutrients and oxygen from the collagen layer underneath it that's diffusing up towards it, and then it removes its waste and its carbon dioxide by diffusing down into the collagen. Typically speaking, that means that these cells don't survive if there are multiple stacks of them because it's too far to diffuse, which I'd said is the same thing as our exterior skin. Another characteristic is that basal membrane, and then they regenerate, high capacity of regeneration. We shed constantly. I told you in biology, you're just wafting cells of you out into the atmosphere, constantly shedding. And so as long as they can receive this adequate nutrition, then we'll replace those lost shells, not shells, cells. Then we started talking about the structure of epithelium. And I wanted to take some time to refresh this because we went really fast. There are 3 basic shapes to epithelial tissue. And this is kind of the only tissue we do this with. With collagen, it's more about how many cells are in a place and how packed it is. For epithelial, it's the shape and the layers. So we have squamous, which is flattened and scale-like, and that's your outer skin. We have cuboidal, which literally do look like a cube when you see them under the microscope. They are cube-shaped like that. And then you have columnar, which my hands, so they're much more of a column rectangular shape. Those are the only three shapes that epithelial tissue comes in. But then there are other things that happen to them that give us more to name. We don't just name 3 types of epithelial tissue. We end up naming about 8 types of epithelial tissue. And so if I was looking at my cell from above, I would see these polyhedral shapes. If I was looking at my cell from the side, then this is more of the shape I would see. And I want you to note that the nucleus conforms to the shape of the cell. And so flattened nucleus, nice rounded nucleus, and elongated nucleus there. Then we have to worry about the layers of cells that we have. So we can have simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and those are all just one layer thick. Then you can have stratified squamous, stratified cuboidal, stratified columnar, and those are all multiple cells thick. And then there's that pseudo-stratified, which actually ends up being one layer thick, but it looks like the nuclei are at different layers in the cell, in the cells, and so it looks like it's supposed to be stratified, and it's not. So here we go. We have simple squamous, cuboidal, columnar, and then we have that pseudo-stratified. These may or may not contain cilia, both of these, depending on where they are in the body. Then you have your stratified, squamous, cuboidal, and columnar, and then you have the special 8th one, which is transitional. Transitional is at least easy enough because you only find it in the human bladder. Maybe not just the human bladder, but you only find it in the bladder. And it goes from a cuboidal shape when the bladder is empty. And as the bladder fills up, get more of a cube here, whatever. And as the bladder fills up, it flattens and flattens and flattens and stretches out so that the bladder can expand into more of a squamous shape. So we stopped here, and I told you that in your notes, you need to make lists of the 4 major simple and the 4 stratified epithelial tissues. And then you want, after you make the list here, you want a column here for description, a column here for location, and a column here for function. And then as we go through all these next slides, you'll be able to just put that information in your chart, and it'll be a nice handy chart for you. Oops, don't scroll. So we're going to talk about simple epithelium. Simple means one layer. Simple squamous is a single layer of flat scale-like cells. It usually forms membranes, lines body cavities, and lines the lungs and the capillaries. It is essential that our lungs and our capillaries come down to only one layer of cells, specifically in the alveoli, because that layer of cells in the alveoli, remember the alveoli are those sacs, those grape-like structures that are in the lung that allow for gas exchange. You have to have that one cell thick alveoli because then you have the blood vessel right here, which is also one cell thick. You need it to be as thin as humanly possible, as biologically possible even, so that gas exchange can occur as rapidly as we need it to in order to maintain life processes. Then you have simple cuboidal. Now I want you to look. You see how flat these cells are. And it's even showing you the slightly pinker area is not even the cells, it's the basement membrane here. So we're only looking at this top layer of tan flat cells. Look at how flat those are. Now look at the cube shape of a simple cuboidal cell. Big takeaway is that it's one layer of cube-shaped cells. They are common in glands and in the ducts of those glands as well. Not duck, quack, quack, but duct, like tube, I guess. What else is a duct? I can only think of air ducts. Ducts. See, I say duck either way, but I mean duct. So just go with my poor speaking, please. It forms the walls of the kidney tubules, and it covers the ovaries. So the kidney tubules will find in the spring semester how they function to filter the blood to get rid of waste. And also in the spring, we'll talk about the reproductive system as well. But this is how that one layer of cuboidal cells looks. And then there's that basement membrane, the pinkish layer underneath it. Now, look how flat the simple epithelium is. Look how cube-shaped the cuboidal cells are. Now let's look at columnar. See how tall they are compared to the other two. So it's a single layer of tall cells. This often includes goblet cells, which is what produces all of our mucus on the inside. They're cute, kind of. They're cute little goblet cells. They look like a fat little goblet, and they are interspersed along, you know, the intestine and the trachea, not the trachea, the esophagus, and anywhere that you need mucus to lubricate. These simple columnar line the digestive tract, specifically. In this example. Remember, simple columnar can also have cilia, which should tell you that they are in other locations, because this one is not saying it has cilia. Pseudostratified is actually one layer of cells. It's very confusing. Look at this PowerPoint. Look at this picture. I'm even going to make it bigger for a second. Look at this picture and see how it does look like there's multiple layers of cells here. It looks like there's at least 2 layers, but if you are to look at where each cell is embedded, you see that each cell only goes from bottom to top. And so they're overlapping each other here, so you can't see that it's just the one cell here and the one cell here. But some of them are showing you this is just one really tall cell. The nuclei are just separated into layers, and it looks like they are multiple layers. It does get confusing. It will trick you on your lab practical, which is why I have also included resources of these slides so you can see what they would look like for you under the microscope. Okay, so this is a single layer, but some cells are shorter than the others, and so it looks like a double layer of cells. Sometimes this is ciliated, and these are found in the respiratory tract. Their major function is absorption and secretion. So those are our 4 simple, because that's what they're called, or single layered cell types for epithelial tissue. Woo, where am I going? Oh, I was supposed to make this big. I do apologize. Oh, but see, this is why I shouldn't do things. Let me, there we go. Sorry, I had my other projector, I had my other monitor on, and so it kicked it off to the other monitor. Now we're going to talk about the 4 stratified types. Well, 3 stratified types, and then the transitional epithelium. Stratified squamous are cells that are flattened. At the free edge, they're flattened. So at our very, very top edge up here, they're flat. They are probably mostly dead at the very top edge, because see how far waste products would have to diffuse down and nutrients would have to diffuse up in order for these cells to stay alive. So they're found as a protective covering wherever friction is common. I told you during our last class that I am sitting here constantly talking. I am constantly sloughing off the cells of my mouth, and so they will be replaced easily, because the mouth is a huge place of friction when you eat and drink and swallow and talk and sing and spit and brush your teeth and all this jazz, everything that happens in the mouth, and hopefully floss too. And so the skin, we definitely know our skin is a protective layer, and then our mouth has a lot of friction, and so does our esophagus. Every time you swallow, as I just did, has a lot of friction. So we need to replace this. Let me make sure. Nope, never mind. That's not doable. Then you have stratified cuboidal, which for some reason doesn't have. Oh, okay, sorry. So stratified cuboidal is 2 layers of cuboidal cells, and stratified columnar are surface cells or columnar in cells underneath vary in shape and size. Look, both are rarely found in the human body. They are found in mainly the ducts sorry, I can't do it, of large glands, and their function is in protection. So they may or may not be represented in the PowerPoint, no, in the microscope slides I have for you, but I really think they are. Then what I consider to be the easy one is transitional epithelium. The shape of cells depends on the amount of stretching, and it lines organs of the urinary system, specifically the bladder. I'm talking about how easy this one is, and you're probably going to be like, this is the one I missed on the whatever, because, you know. Also, everything called epithelium, we have endothelium as well, and we talked about this. This is our serosa. Serosa is tissue that lines body cavities, and so it's a simple, so a single layer, sheet of epithelial squamous cells, and it provides slick, friction-reducing lining in all hollow circulatory system organs. Okay, so fine, we're inside the circulatory system right now, but our lymphatic vessels, blood vessels, and our heart. Our heart is constantly pumping. The pump, 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 pump. Can you imagine if it wasn't slick and wet on the inside and outside of the heart, how quickly we would rub holes into that heart tissue and then also die because you can't have a hole in your heart? Okay, so here is the membranes. So here is our epithelial membranes. I just wanted to check to make sure before I started speaking in. So these are continuous multicellular sheets composed of at least two primary tissue types, epithelium bound to an underlying layer of connective tissue, because everything's bound to an underlying layer of connective tissue, you will find. The three common types are our mucous membranes with those goblet cells, our cutaneous membrane, and our serosa, but serous membrane. The mucous membranes, you know where your mucous membranes are, but the entire digestive tract is lined with mucous membrane because you need that ability to have a wet surface to push food through. And then you have to have a wet surface to absorb the nutrients. And then you have to have a wet surface to be able to defecate the waste. If it's dry and you are all dried up, it's called being constipated. And then you can't remove the waste like you properly need to. The respiratory system as well, and the urogenital tracts. Anything that opens to the outside is lined with mucus. It's a protective measure that we have so that anything that can enter through our respiratory system, through our food, or through anything that can enter through the urogenital tracts, so mostly STDs, sperm, waste, if somebody's not clean, don't think about it. We need mucous membranes to protect us. The nasal mucosa is there to trap dust and allergens and what have you, and then the cilia that is in that epithelium pushes it back to the throat and we swallow it in our digestive tract. Same thing with the mucus in our mouth. We obviously swallow it because it's mixed in with the food and the drink that we have, and then just the amount of saliva we produce without having to eat or drink. And that all goes into the stomach, and hopefully whatever you have breathed in or eaten is something that can be killed by stomach acid. There are a few organisms that you can eat, Shigella and Salmonella and Heliobacter pylori, which is actually, yes, it has to be ingested. How else would it get in there? But they call stomach ulcers. They can survive the stomach acid, and that's typically how we get food poisoning, unless you're getting it from norovirus, which is then a virus in a completely different system. And then STD wise, the mucosa down in, okay, so the urine in your bladder is technically sterile, but the last 1 to 2 inches of your urethra is colonized with bacteria. Couldn't come up with the word, sorry. And so the idea is that every time you urinate, you are flushing out that bacteria and you're keeping it at a maintained level. Bacteria can crawl up into the bladder and then into the kidneys, and you get a kidney infection, and it's very serious. And it can kill you because you're not filtering the blood properly because your kidneys are inflamed. The same thing with the reproductive tract. The vagina is lined with mucosa, and then of course the urethra of males is lined with mucosa, and both of them are to help trap and expel foreign particles. I got nothing else. They are all wet or moist membranes bathed by secretions. It is necessary for us, remember from 1406, that you are walking bags of seawater fired by electrical impulses, and you are protein that functions, and you're just an amazing little thing, but we came from the oceans. And so we have to maintain that wet environment on the inside. And they're often adapted for absorption and secretion. Cutaneous membrane is your skin. It's an organ made of keratinized. Keratin is a protein. Keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. What that means is the top two layers of your skin are no longer living cells, but they are protein-embedded cell structures, basically. We took away the nucleus and all the cell organelles, and we just filled it up with protein that is firmly attached to a thick connective layer called our dermis at the bottom of all the cell layers. Keratinized squamous epithelium is waterproof. It is slightly acidic due to our secretions. It is supposed to be impenetrable unless your skin is dry or you have a cut or a puncture or something has breached your cutaneous layer. It is uniquely different because it is exposed to air and is a dry membrane. It's our wetsuit, but opposite. Like you wear a wetsuit in the ocean to keep yourself dry and also at a normal temperature because the ocean is cold. But then our skin itself is an inside-out wetsuit to keep us wet on the inside, but keep the outside dry. Okay, that's a weird way to look at it, but let's go with it. What do I need to do? I need to pause for a minute because there we go. Oh no, sorry, I got thirsty and then I wanted to drink some water and then that happened. Okay. So our serosa, or our serous membranes, are the moist membranes closed in the ventral body cavities, so your thoracic cavity and your abdominal cavity, the belly side cavities. It consists of parietal and visceral layers. The visceral layers are the layers that are touching the organs, and the parietal layers are the layers that are touching more of the inside of your skin surface. Remember, parietal means wall. Actually, you might not remember that. But when we talk about the skull, which is our next unit, I think we do skeleton before muscles, we have the temporal down here, and then the parietal walls of the skull. Parietal means wall. Serosa are named according to site and specific organ location. You have your pleura serosa. You are screen sharing, right? Okay. You have your pleural serosa that is lining the thoracic wall and covering the lungs, the pleural cavities, the pleura, pericardium around the heart, or pertaining to. Eum means pertaining to, peri around, cardi the heart, encloses the heart. And then the peritoneum, abdominal, pelvic cavity. I don't have fancy words for what peritoneum means, sorry. The other side of epithelial tissue, instead of being a layer, they're all layers. Instead of being an absorbing filtration layer, is that we have glands, which are one or more cells that produce and secrete an aqueous, which means water soluble or water-based fluid that typically contains proteins. Glandular cells, I don't know why I'm reading this to you, obtain needed substances from the blood and transfer them through chemical reactions into the secretory product. So they secrete. You have many glands. You can have endocrine or exocrine glands, and they can be unicellular or multicellular. So once again, you have different ways that you can classify glands. Hello, I am clicking. Endocrine glands are ductless. I said it right, which means they don't have a way. They just release out into the bloodstream. They don't need to secrete anywhere. They just release into the bloodstream. So these are our hormones. We have many hormones. Remember, I told you I'm assuming biology that you are actually more regulated by your hormones than you are by anything else in the human body. And so we all like to pretend that we are in charge of ourselves, but really these little chemicals floating around in our blood are what's in charge of us. And then you have exocrine glands. So endo, inside, exo, outside. These empty through ducts to the epithelial surface. So these are our sweat, which are known as sudoriferous, and our oil, which are known as sebaceous glands. And I wish those were written down here. Salivary glands, constantly producing saliva. Your liver is excreting out, not through to your epithelial surface, but to the epithelial surface near it. The pancreas is excreting insulin. Mammary glands, if you produce children and are a female, then your mammary glands secrete first colostrum, which is a precursor to milk. It's protein rich, and then normal regular breast milk. Then your mucus glands that are lining the digestive and respiratory and urogenital tract, etc. So unicellular exocrine glands, remember, endocrine. Hold on. I think that should be unicellular endocrine glands. Actually, let me just end the show since I did that. Whoa. Okay, well, anyway. It says unicellular exocrine. We're going to go with that until I can prove differently. Dang, this computer. I didn't tell you to extend. Thank you. Our ductless glands that produce mucin. Mucin is mucus, which once dissolved in water forms a cloudy, slimy coating that both protects and lubricates surfaces. What? And so these include the goblet cells that are super cute, like I said, and the respiratory mucosa. Multicellular exocrine glands, epithelial, secretory, supportive. You can either have simple or compound. They actually get really complicated when it comes to glandular when it comes to glandular naming. I took a moment so I could pull this page out, which of course you can't see very well, but you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ways that we can name glands. And I will go ahead and make sure that this is available for you on your Canvas. But just real quick, you can have simple tubular, and then you can have simple branched tubular. So the simple means it's one layer of cells thick. Let me see if this is going to go ahead and do that for us. Not really, but they are seeing some of the things. So they're single cell. So the simple tubular is just one layer of cells in one tube. The simple branched has branches of one layers of cells. And then you have simple coiled tubular, which obviously is coiled like a little pig's tail right there. Then you have simple acinar, which this says here on the screen, acinar means alveolar. Then you have simple branched acinar, and then you have compounds, compound tubular, compound acinar, and then this bottom, this number 3 on the screen is the tubulo alveolar or tubulo acinar. Woo, not on the camera. Version of glands. So glands actually get pretty complex when you're talking about them. I'll make sure that's available for you. So tubular, secretory cells form a tube. Alveolar or acinar, they just form little flasks like, or just little sacs. And then tubulo-alveolar have both tubular and alveolar or sac-like portions to them. So it's a mix of both. Because multicellular glands secrete in different ways, they can be classified functionally based on how they secrete. So this is a whole nother layer. So this is based on structure. Well, first you have endocrine, exocrine. Then you have simple or multicellular. Then you have structure. And then you have ways that they secrete their products. So glands get super complicated. You have merocrine glands. You're going to need to know these 3 things. They secrete by exocytosis. I do hope you remember from 1406 that exocytosis is when a product is created in the cell, goes through the endoplasmic reticulum, most likely the smooth endoplasmic reticulum in this case, goes to the Golgi apparatus, gets sorted, is put in a vesicle, is taken to the cell membrane, and is just released from the cell at the cell membrane. Those are merocrine glands. Pancreas, sweat glands, salivary glands. Holocrine glands, the entire cell ruptures, releasing secretions and dead cell fragments. So oil, you wonder why you get pimples in your oil glands on your face, because you're actually creating pus with the dead cell fragments. And then apocrine glands are a less numerous type of sweat gland. So you have merocrine glands being your most common type. Apocrine glands are the ones that basically cause body odor. And so there's less of them, thank God, but they do exist.